I was 23 years old, and I had never once done anything just for me. Everything I had ever done was for someone else's idea of who I should be. My grades were perfect. My apartment was clean. My clothes were pressed, and my smile was ready before I opened the door every morning. I worked at a firm in the city. Glass walls, gray carpet, the sound of keyboards and ambition. I had been there for 2 years, and I had not taken a single day off. My manager was a woman named Claire. She was 48 years old, and she always carried a blue folder. She never smiled, but she never needed to. Her approval was currency, and I spent every day trying to earn it. I arrived early. I stayed late. I answered emails at midnight and prepared reports nobody asked for. I thought this was what success looked like. I thought this was who I was supposed to be, but there was something I never told anyone. At night, after the laptop closed and the apartment went quiet, I felt nothing. Not tired, not proud, not sad, just empty, like a room where nobody lives. I told myself it was normal. I told myself everyone felt this way. I told myself it would pass when I got the promotion, when I earned more, when I became enough. Then one morning in November, I woke up and I could not get out of bed. Not because I was tired, because my body simply refused. My chest felt heavy. My hands would not stop shaking. Something was wrong. I went to work anyway. I sat at my desk and I stared at my screen. The words blurred. My head was loud with a sound I could not name. By noon, I was in the bathroom, sitting on the floor, unable to stand up. Claire found me. She opened the door and looked at me for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, "Go home, Amelia." I had never heard her say my name like that before. Like I was a person, not a position. I went to the doctor that afternoon. The waiting room was cold. I sat in a plastic chair and looked at my hands. I had not eaten since the day before. I had not noticed until now. The doctor was a man with silver hair and pale blue eyes. He was calm in the way that people are calm when they have seen a great deal of pain. He asked me questions, simple ones at first. "How long have you felt this way?" I said, "I don't know." He wrote something down. Then he said something I was not ready for. He said, "Your body is not broken, but it is telling you something very clearly. You have been running on empty for a very long time, and now it has stopped running altogether." He used a word I had heard before but never applied to myself. Burnout, severe burnout, with signs of something deeper that needed more tests, more time, more attention. I sat in that chair and I felt something strange. Not fear, relief, like a part of me had been waiting for permission to stop. And someone had finally given it. He told me I needed to rest, not a week, at least a month, possibly more. He said if I continued the way I was going, the consequences would be serious. I walked home through the city. The streets were full of people moving fast, heads down, somewhere to be. I had been one of them for 2 years. I had never once looked up. My apartment felt different that evening, smaller somehow. I sat on the floor with my back against the sofa, and I looked at the walls. Awards from university, a calendar full of things to do, a plant I had forgotten to water for 3 weeks. I called my father. He answered on the second ring, the way he always did. I said, "Papa, I'm not okay." There was a pause. Then he said, "I know. I've been waiting for you to say that." He came the next morning. He took the train from his city to mine. 4 hours. He did not tell me he was coming. He just appeared at my door with the bag of groceries and his quiet eyes. He made soup. He did not ask me what happened. He did not tell me what to do. He just sat with me at the kitchen table while I cried for the first time in years. I had not known until that moment how much I needed to. That week was the strangest of my life. No alarm, no emails, no performance, just the apartment, the quiet and the slow, uncomfortable feeling of not knowing who I was. I had been so busy being good at things that I had never asked myself what I wanted, not what looked right, not what made people nod and say, "Well done." What I wanted, I did not have an answer. That terrified me more than the diagnosis. On the fourth day, I found a notebook at the back of a drawer. I had bought it 2 years ago with the intention of journaling. I had never opened it. The pages were blank and waiting. I sat by the window with a cup of tea and I wrote one question at the top of the first page. Who are you when no one is watching? I held the pen for a long time, and I could not write a single word. My father left after 5 days. He hugged me at the door and said, "Rest is not weakness. Rest is how broken things become whole again." I held those words for a long time after he was gone. The test results came back. The doctor called me in. He told me the deeper concern had been ruled out. My heart was healthy. My body was exhausted but not damaged. What I needed was time. I left his office and stood on the pavement outside. The city moved around me. A bus passed. A child laughed somewhere nearby. I tilted my face up toward the sky. It was gray and cold and completely ordinary. And I thought, I'm alive. I am still here. I went back to the notebook that evening. I opened it to the same page, the same question. Who are you when no one is watching? This time I wrote. I wrote for 2 hours without stopping. About the girl who used to draw in the margins of her textbooks. About the summers she spent reading novels in her grandmother's garden. About the way she felt when she heard certain music. About everything she had set aside because it did not look useful. I had not drawn anything in 4 years. I had not read a novel in 2. I had not listened to music just for the feeling of it in longer than I could remember. I had been so busy becoming something that I had forgotten I was already someone. The next morning, I bought a sketchbook. A cheap one from the shop on the corner. I sat at the kitchen table and I drew badly for an hour. My lines were unsteady. My proportions were wrong. But something inside me, something very quiet and very old, woke up. I started going outside again. Not for meetings. Not for errands. Just to walk. I noticed things I had never noticed before. The way the light hit the canal in the afternoon. The sound of a piano coming from an open window. A cat sleeping in a patch of winter sun. Small things. Ordinary things. But they felt like gifts. Like the world had been here all along. Offering itself to me, and I had been too busy to accept. 3 weeks into my rest, Claire sent me an email. Short and professional, the way she always wrote. She said she hoped I was recovering. She said my position would be held for me. Then, at the very end, one last line. She wrote, "Take the time you need. The work will wait. You only get one of you." I read it 3 times. I had spent 2 years trying to earn something from this woman, and she had given it to me in the moment I stopped trying. I thought about that for days. How I had chased approval so hard that I had run straight past myself. How the things I actually needed had always been available to me. I had just never believed I deserved them. In my 5th week, I took a train to the coast. My father had always talked about a small town by the sea where he had gone as a boy. I had never been. I had always said maybe next year. The train ride was 3 hours. I sat by the window with my sketchbook open on my lap. The fields passed in long flat sweeps of green and gray. I drew what I saw. Badly, slowly, happily. The town was small and quiet. Stone streets, old buildings, the smell of salt in the air before you even reach the water. I checked into a small guest house with a view of the harbor. That afternoon, I walked to the sea. The wind was cold. The waves were slow and gray and enormous. I stood at the edge where the sand met the water, and I just looked. For a long time, I just looked. I thought about the girl I had been before all of this. The one who thought being tired meant she was doing enough. the one who confused exhaustion with purpose, the one who had never once sat still long enough to hear what she actually needed. I thought about my father on that train. I thought about Claire and her single quiet line at the end of an email. I thought about the doctor who had looked at me and seen a person, not a problem. The cold wind pushed against my face. I did not step back. I let it. I opened my arms slightly, the way you do when you want to feel something fully. And I felt it. The cold, the sound, the bigness of the water, the smallness of me. It was not frightening. It was a relief. That evening, I sat in a small cafe and ordered soup and bread. The owner was an older man who refilled my water without being asked. I opened my notebook to a new page. This time, I did not write a question. I wrote what I knew. I am 23 years old. I almost disappeared trying to be everything everyone needed. I am still here, and I am just beginning to find out who that is. I stayed 3 days. I walked every morning. I drew every afternoon. I ate slowly, and I slept deeply, and I did not check my email once. On the last morning, I went back to the water. The sky was pale and the sea was calm. I sat on a rock and I drew the horizon, just a line. The place where the water ends and the sky begins. Simple and endless and enough. I thought about going back. To the city, to the firm, to the glass walls and the gray carpet. But I knew something had shifted. Not the outside, the inside. I was going back different. I did not know yet what that meant in practical terms. I did not know if I would stay at the firm or leave. I did not know what came next. But for the first time, I was not afraid of not knowing. Not knowing meant there was still space, and space meant possibility. On the train home, I opened my notebook again. I read what I had written 3 days before. I am still here, and I am just beginning to find out who that is. I underlined it. Then I closed the notebook and watched the fields go by. My apartment looked the same when I returned. The calendar on the wall, the awards, the plant. But I watered the plant first thing. I watered it and I put it by the window where the light was better. That night, I sat on the floor again. The same spot as before, back against the sofa. But it felt different now. Not like a collapse, like a choice. I was sitting here because I wanted to. Because it was quiet and I like the quiet now. I had spent years filling every silence. With work, with noise, with the performance of being fine. But silence, I was learning, was not emptiness. Silence was where you could finally hear yourself. I do not have a perfect ending to give you. Life does not work that way. I went back to work the following month. I was not the same person who had left. I said no to things. I left at a reasonable hour. I took my lunch outside. Some days were still hard. Some mornings the old habits came back. The urge to prove, to perfect, to perform. But I had something now that I did not have before. I had the memory of the sea, and the notebook, and my father on the train, and the understanding that rest is not a reward for finishing. Rest is part of the work. I still have the sketchbook. I draw in it most evenings. I am still bad at it. I do not care. And the plant is still alive. It is doing much better now. I think we both needed a little more light.